It may be time for ghosts and monsters, but I'm not gonna let CGC scare me with their grades. Hey there, today I have a CGC unboxing, and in this video I'm going to open up books that I sent to CGC that made their way through the Palm Beach presser. I got kind of on a roll where I was sending books to Palm Beach presser every 2 or 3 weeks. He was routing them to CGC after he was done working on the books. So I had several orders kind of in the pipeline and hope to really pick things up again. I've got some really fun books coming in that I want to grade and assess and really see if it's worthwhile to send them in for cleaning and pressing and send them off to Palm Beach Presser. So I'm hoping to get that queue lined up, but I really was taking advantage of some of the new implementations that I'd made in my spreadsheet process, looking at enhancing things like creating that decision column and really diving into the numbers to really understand which books needed to be prioritized to send off for ultimately getting graded by CGC. Now, this is going to be a fun unboxing because it was kind of like split in half, where half of the books, or close to half, have a theme that should be pretty easy to recognize. I collect this particular artist's books and got through another batch that I had ordered raw, and definitely felt like some of these were worth submitting to CGC for grading. And then the other half, I would say, are more traditional and typical of the books that I would send in. But I think what's fun for me, and hopefully fun for you as you see the grades revealed, is these are not all slam dunks. They're not all like, borderline 9.8 pre-screen worthy books. These are books that I take risk in sending them in, and I think that's part of the fun. It's also part of the frustration when you don't hit on some of the risk, but I always try to minimize the risk, meaning if I do send a book to Palm Beach Presser and it gets all the way to CGC and through Palm Beach's estimated grades and the final CGC grade, if it doesn't work out, it's still okay. It's still a grade in the ballpark that would be worth sending through the process. And also, it just encourages and motivates me to potentially look for a better copy down the road. There's a book in here in particular that I got a little frustrated with a grade that I got and decided to get another copy and try again. And, just trying to upgrade. And as I upgrade, then maybe letting go of some of those books in a lesser condition, or maybe a condition that I just didn't want to hold on to. And that's also part of my strategy, is always just trying to keep and maintain the highest quality and books in the best condition possible, because as I go through my collection and enjoy fingering, I want to make sure that I'm always going to pull out the best conditioned book that I have possible, or know that I really tried to make an effort to keep my overall comic book collection in as high a grade as possible. I may not have as many grails and keys as the next person, but it's something that I think not necessarily makes my collection unique, but it is certainly an aspect of my collection that I really appreciate and I take pride in. So let's get to these books. I'll show you the grade right before I see them. I don't know the grades. I did not look ahead of time. I'm really interested. There's some tough books in here to get a high grade in, and I'm really excited and curious to see how they ended up turning out from CGC. So it's time to take a look at this new packaging that they sent, still marked with, I'm pretty sure, I think it's Portuguese, this word here. But I know that when I don't understand the word, I can't pronounce it, but I know that when I see it, maybe it is Portuguese for CGC, or grading. Maybe it says grading. I'm not sure. It's time to open this up. Crack open this new case, see how they're packing these books now, and take a look at the final grades that my books got from CGC. Okay, kind of interesting. Essentially, it comes with this like super thick bubble packaging. I mean, I guess it can be repurposed for different things, but it's like two pieces, and they're not like even taped or anything together. They can just like pull apart. I can't believe I put that on my head. And they're super sturdy, super firm, just how you like them. and the books are protected. I will say it makes for more challenging unboxing because the slabs have to kind of come out, and it's really hard not to see the grades. And I didn't see any specific grades, but had to kind of position the slabs away so I couldn't see them. But let's actually see them this time. And I'm just going to grab the first book here, and it is Spectacular Spider-Man 101. I told myself this was going to be a fun submission, and there's lots of books here in this unboxing that I'm excited to get back and see. But this one was one of those I held on to for a while, just waiting for the right time, the right presser, just the right moment to send this in for grading. But this is, I was going to say it's an absolutely spectacular cover, which it is, but this is the John Byrne negative space cover before like negative space variants were a thing, and have always just loved this issue of Spectacular Spider-Man. This is from 1985. I felt like it was close, and looking at Palm Beach's grader notes, which I'll talk about with each book, along with what my original assessment was, I had Spectacular Spider-Man 101 as a 9.4. There were no grader notes on this provided. He simply said a 9.8 is possible. So let's see if it ended up getting the 9.8. And it did. And what a fantastic start to this unboxing. Just a really, really nice, clean, Spectacular Spider-Man 101. The symbiote costume and just how it blends in. And, you know, I've heard some different things about John Byrne over the years, of how, particularly that issue of Alpha Flight, where a lot of the panels were just left blank because he was saying that there was a lot of snow and light in the issue, but he did that to kind of meet a deadline, or if he was falling behind. And this could have been one of those cases, but I absolutely love this book and so happy to get this one in a 9.8. So a really, really great start there. Spectacular Spider-Man 101 from 1985 getting the 9.8. And I always love when Ron does not leave any grader notes and it says 9.8 possible, because it's usually a really good sign. Here's Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 10, also from 1985. This one was rather timely. I did not send this in simply just because of the Doctor Doom reveal with Robert Downey Jr. It just happened to kind of be in my queue for books that I wanted to get graded. I'd love to have a full run of Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars graded, hopefully in a 9.8. I have a few of them. This is one I didn't have. I love all the Mike Zeck cover art here, and just absolutely love the armor just kind of melting away, and the whole look of Doom on this, and he's still not defeated, not giving up. This one I had assessed as a 9.4, and Palm Beach also said, even after he was done working on it, that it could be still a 9.4. He noted several small color-breaking spine ticks on the back and front. So let's see. This could be a case where there are color-breaking ticks, and now it's just a situation where we need to see how lenient or how tough this particular grader was with my book. So here we go. Marvel Superhero Secret Wars number 10. Got a 9.2. So harsh. I had the book at a 9.4. Sent it to Palm Beach. He said it was still a 9.4, and CGC gave it the 9.2. And I think it was just too many ticks here on this one. I mean, the back has a couple that I see, but most of them are on the front. And I can see here also a color-breaking slight dog ear on the back top cover. I mean, that corner is like hanging on for dear life. Could also end up being a tear. Then interesting down here in the bottom right corner, the book looks like, well, I don't want to say it's, I'm not going to say it was damaged, but it does look like it's almost raised up a little bit, almost like it needs to be pressed again. But I don't know. This isn't a crack and resubmit situation. A little bit of softening up here. So this was just probably my fault for maybe looking at a book and getting too excited and wanting to send it in. I think the assessment that Palm Beach and I gave the book in CGC's final grade, I think it's all fair. So one hit and one miss so far. Secret Wars number 10 getting a 9.2 white pages. Let's move on. The next one is Fantastic Four 204. This is from 1979. I'm probably reaching, but definitely some loose ties to some MCU properties and characters. But I've always loved this Al Milgrom cover of Fantastic Four. And Palm Beach's grader notes on this one, he noted one light spine stress line at the top staple, and he gave the book an estimate of a 9.6 or 9.8. I had originally graded this book as a 9.4. So let's see what this copy of Fantastic Four 204 from 1979 got, and it got a 9.8 white pages. First word that always comes to mind is fantastic, but just like Spectacular Spider-Man was spectacular, this is a really fantastic 9.8. Right in my wheelhouse. In terms of the books that I look for, I look to grab these high-grade copies, non-keys, books that have a higher ceiling, and just books also that are nostalgic to me, that have just a certain appeal. As I display a lot of these books, I love these older books that are just really classic comics from any publisher, but certainly this is just a classic look of Marvel Comics at the time in the late 70s. So great work, Palm Beach. Thank you very much for the 9.8 on this one. Fantastic Four 204 from 1979, getting that 9.8 white pages. Okay, on to the next. We have Pacific Presents #1. This is from 1982, and it's probably a good introductory book into the other half that I mentioned, the second half of the theme of this submission. When I began collecting books by Dave Stevens, I started to make a checklist of all of the books that he had done interior art, cover art, characters that he created, watched the documentary that I think a lot of people did, and started to chase a lot of these books. And some of them I talk about maybe tiers of Stevens books, with like Planet Comics and the 3D Space Vixens probably being at the top. This one is probably entry level, not a book that you think about when you think of Dave Stevens, but in a moment I'll turn the book over too, so you can really see the cool cover on the back. Almost makes me want to display the book so you can see kind of this pinup of the Rocketeer, which was his creator-owned character that he created that eventually did become a movie, and a lot of the Rocketeer was touched on in the documentary, so I don't want to recap it here. But pretty interesting, his relationship with Betty Page, and then Betty Page being the character that was not in the movie, but clearly homaged and referenced, and just kind of a fascinating story if you ever want to check it out. And I was just totally into it and picked up a lot of these books early on and knew eventually I would send many of them in for grading. So this is Pacific Presents #1, featuring the Rocketeer. I had originally assessed this book as a 9.2. Palm Beach said general light surface wear, scuffs on back cover, light wear at bottom spine corner with slight blunt, 9.4 plus. So probably too many problems with this book to get a 9.8, but let's see what CGC said, and they said 9.8. Okay, so this book was probably in really bad shape because there were so many notes on this one that Palm Beach noted, and it turned out great. Very, very nice cover. So we have Dave Stevens and Steve Ditko, stories, cover, and art. So the way this is kind of separated here is you have the Stevens Rocketeer story at the top and Steve Ditko's The Missing Man at the bottom. And maybe one of the best parts is the back cover of this book featuring the Rocketeer. Just outstanding. Really, really cool, really nice back cover here that could have easily been the cover. And this is partially what makes this book tough, is you have the additional back cover with the black background, getting a lot of ticks along the spine. But this turned out really, really nicely. Very happy to get Pacific Presents #1 in a 9.8 to add to my collections of graded Dave Stevens books. And speaking of, let's go ahead and take a look at Pacific Presents #2 from 1983. Same sort of setup as Pacific Presents #1. It's split between the Stevens and Ditko story, but this cover is all Stevens. Another tough book to get in high grade. Now this one I had assessed a little bit higher. I had given a 9.2 to Pacific Presents #1. This one I gave a 9.4. Palm Beach's Greater Notes, light wear at spine corners, a 9.6 tilde. Might be my favorite character that he uses when estimating, because I have my own interpretation of why he uses it. I can almost picture him at some point kind of throwing his hands in the air like this could go in any direction. So I love to kind of have fun with these estimates. But 9.6 with a tilde. And let's see what CGC said about Pacific Presents #2 from 1983. And it got the 9.8. So that's very, very nice. 9.8 white pages. Now to have both of these as kind of a set here, both the Pacific Presents Stevens books. This one, just like I said, really tough because of the cover design to get the 9.8, and just awesome to have both of these now together. This one, unfortunately, it has an ad for Alien Worlds #2. It is a Stevens cover, but not quite the really cool pinup cover on the back of Pacific Presents #1, but I'll take it. So let me get these sitting next to each other like so we can appreciate both of them together. So awesome. Thank you, Palm Beach, for working on those two. Love seeing both of those in a 9.8. Another book, I feel like I've almost had this in every other unboxing. Vanguard Illustrated #2 from 1984, another Dave Stevens book. This one I was calling entry level. The Pacific Presents, as much as I love them, not difficult to find. Very easy, affordable books. Yes, to get in a high grade, to get a 9.8 might be a little tricky, but they're plentiful and really easy to come by. This book, too, was that way until, for me personally, Mile High Comics jacked up the price big time on these, but I used to just almost just like skimming their catalog for these, where every time I went to place an order, I added one of these to my cart, and then I just went on and placed the order for the other books that I was interested in, just because I knew this book was way underpriced there, and was always surprised that every time I went back there were more, and the orders were fulfilled. So this is another copy I picked up from Mile High Comics. This is from 1984. And looking at Palm Beach's Greater Notes, he left no notes, 9.8 probable. Like I said, with the Spectacular Spider-Man 101, it's probably my favorite assessment. I had assessed the book a 9.6, just needing a little bit more to kind of put it over the top and get the 9.8. And so let's see if it did, and it certainly did. Amazing. Love this. Vanguard Illustrated #2. Definitely is probably more of the classical Stevens cover, or what maybe comes to mind when you think about a Dave Stevens book. And I always like to point out it's the first appearance of the Stargrazers. Nobody cares about that. They just care about what's happening on this cover. And there we go, Vanguard Illustrated #2 from 1984, also getting a 9.8 white pages. Next up is Wolverine #8 from 1989. This was one that I had sent in a while ago, and it ended up getting a little bit of a lower grade, got a 9.2, and it's kind of borderline for me, worthy of keeping or making that my final version, my final collectible. And I kind of knew as soon as I revealed the grade that I was going to be on the hunt for another copy and try this again. And here we are with that additional copy. So this Wolverine #8, I had assessed this one raw as a 9.2, but noticed several pressable defects and blemishes that I felt like it was worthy of sending in. And I talked about the upgrade game. We don't have to make the entire leap up to 9.8 when you're upgrading. It can be incremental. So I'm really trying to remain positive, yes, but conservative with this, as I graded it myself and screened it as a 9.2. And Palm Beach has greater notes on this one. Spine corner wear, especially at the bottom, with some color loss, wear at the spine edge, and color loss at the fold. So a lot of notes here, but he still gave it the 9.6. But this one, we have a new designation, a 9.6 minus. So maybe what he's saying is this has no shot at a 9.8. Probably caps at a 9.6, but wouldn't be surprised maybe if it got a 9.4. And there's only one way to find out, and that's to reveal it here to see what CGC gave this copy of Wolverine #8 from 19 $4.89, and it got a 9.8. All right, so I apologize for saying we don't have to make the jump when we're upgrading all the way up to a 9.8, and now I look a little foolish. But again, as I like to say, wrong and foolish in the right direction. So here we are. Amazing. I love this. Finally, 9.8 white pages on this too. Such an awesome classic John Buscema cover, patch, Joe Fixit, the expressions, the all blue cover. And what was interesting when I was looking at prices on these, Wolverine #1, the first issue of his first ongoing series, I think it's highly collectible. There's a direct and a newsstand copy, and remember even buying that first issue off the spinner rack. So my copy's newsstand. I bought it at Thrifty Drugstore, where I bought a lot of my comics back when I was a kid. And yet this one is probably the one from that first batch of Wolverine issues, I think, before we start getting into some of the Jim Lee covers and John Byrne and some other artists. Like this initial run by Claremont and Buscema, this is the issue that everybody really gravitates to. And so I'm really happy to have this, but yeah, what a striking, solid copy here. I definitely understand and see the points that he's making, and I really appreciate the detail with which Palm Beats gives his grader notes, because I can totally see what he's talking about. The tiny bit of color loss down here that's also creating some whitening on this corner, but just slightly enough. And I think the fact that the rest of the book is so pristine that they just allowed it. Palm Beach, fantastic job on this. Thank you very much. But edge to edge, except for this one corner, it's about as sharp as you're going to get. So very, very cool. And also maybe a secondary prize, you do have the Rob Liefeld Wolverine on the back. Arguably as cool, not as cool as the Stevens Rocketeer pinup on the back of Pacific Presents #1, but it is what it is. I'm just talking and babbling at this point because I can't believe I got a 9.8 on that. That's super cool, super awesome. Gore Shriek #1. This is from 1986 from Fantico Enterprises. This was a book that I believe I found last year, kind of getting into the Halloween season, the fall season. I went on a run of looking at Bronze Age horror, House of Mystery, House of Secrets, and also kind of secondarily trying to explore, maybe some underground horror comics as well. And that's where, looking at books like Twisted Tales and Gore Shriek, I was really kind of leaning into that pretty heavily for a while, and was able to find this book. And as you can see, yes, the artwork, pretty horrific, all in a very cool, positive way. But also, we basically have a black and white cover with the green trade of Gore Shriek at the top. So an extremely tough book to get in a high grade, regardless, certainly in a 9.8. But picked up a few copies, and they were all relatively around the same grade, and I felt like this was probably the best out of those, and I had assessed this book as a 9.2. Palm Beach noted some light wear at spine corners and gave it a 9.6 plus. So I kind of interpret those grade estimates however I want to, honestly, but I look at that 9.6 plus as he's pretty certain it's going to get a 9.6 and has the shot on a 9.8, but probably the floor on this one is 9.6, which still would be a really nice bump up from 9.2. But let's see what CGC gave it. It gave it a 9.8. And like I said, just a tremendously difficult book to get in a 9.8. If you are into underground horror comics, this is, again, I don't dive too deep. I pretty much stay in the mainstream, and so this is about as off track as I will get in terms of comics. I'm more or less right down middle of the road, Marvel, DC, and so this was actually for me a real deviation from books that I would typically pick up. But again, for me also, the draw is value, availability, buying from a trustworthy source. And that's what this ended up being, and certainly putting it into the hands of Palm Beach Presser, who I trust with my books as well. This is interesting. It's the first Greg Capullo published artwork. Capullo, now famous for certainly Batman, and an extremely lengthy run on Spawn in relationship with Todd McFarlane, and now kind of coming back and doing some Marvel. Been around for a long time. Speaking of trusted, a very trusted creator, and this is his first published artwork, which adds a little bit of additional interest and value in the book. But pretty cool. Gore Shriek #1 from 1986, getting a 9.8 white pages. Tough book to get a 9.8, so happy there as well. A few more to go. We've got Sheena 3D Special #1 from 1985. I won't repeat myself as I did earlier about just kind of going on that run, my checklist of books to pick up, where Dave Stevens was involved primarily on the cover art, also possibly some interiors, his own characters like Rocketeer. This one, just as a side note from like a data perspective, as I gather a lot of data about comic books, I'm not saying that this one was underpriced or overlooked in any way, but there is something to be said when books are listed not necessarily incorrectly, but they're listed in a way that makes them hard to find or hard to search for. So this could be cataloged as Blackthorn 3D Special. Sometimes it's just Sheena Special #1 or Sheena 3D #1 without the word special. But nevertheless, it's special to me, and I had to have it, and I had to pick it up because it is cover art once again by the great Dave Stevens. And this one was interesting because it was probably it was the second lowest grade of a book that I sent in. I had screened this book myself as a 9.0, and Palm Beach's notes, he wrote that there is some light surface wear to front cover, and he gave it a 9.6 plus. So this is the same estimate that he gave Gore Shriek as a 9.6 plus. I'm hoping it has the same outcome. Love this book. Here it is, Sheena 3D Special #1, Blackthorn Comics from 1985, getting a 9.8. Wow. I needed to look at this one for a minute. Just absolutely stunning and gorgeous. Love that teal background that's going on. And Stevens, every line that he put into his art, it's just something else. Like there was no wasted line, and there's so much to see and look at in just what we all know is a comic book cover. We even have the bird kind of giving some side eye back to Sheena. I mean, it's just so cool. I love it. You know, and you also have Jerry Iger's Sheena, Queen of the Jungle 3D. There's lots of different ways that I think online sellers classify this book, but really fortunate that I was able to track it down, getting a 9.8 white pages on it. Super happy there to add to my Stevens collection. Next book is Fantastic Four 181 from 1977, going back to the other half of this shipment where very traditional late bronze, early copper age Marvel that I love to collect. And even though it is from 1977, not an issue from the 60s, this is cover art by Jack Kirby. And so sometimes these books, Kirby will sneak in and do a cover, or, this is his second tour of duty with Marvel, where he left to go to DC and then came back and had a run on Captain America, and also did a number of covers on different books, just like this. Now on this one, I had originally assessed the book as a 9.6. This is one of the rare cases where my assessment was just flat out wrong. You can see that I've had a lot of success in this order, but some failure too. The Secret Wars I missed on. This one I could also possibly miss on, as Palm Beach noted that there is a stain at Johnny's feet, and he did work to improve on it. Still estimated a 9.4 for this, where I just missed the stain, and this happens sometimes. I do know that Palm Beach offers a pre-screen service of his own, and so if you do need additional help with grading and screening, I think it would be worthwhile to pay the couple of bucks that he charges to look at the books, because you end up spending a lot more money to go through with pressing and grading and shipping and all of that. And it's worthwhile. I do take pride in my ability to grade, but there are just things that as an amateur I miss as well. And so this is most likely one of those cases, but let's see what the grade ended up being for Fantastic Four 181. And again, I look really dumb, but in a good way. Here we go, 9.8 white pages, Fantastic Four 181 from 1977 with a Jack Kirby cover. And as I shift the book in the light, I can definitely see what he's talking about. And there's almost like a little bit of just a tiny bit of residue in a way, or I can see kind of the outline of where the stain was or what happened with it. It almost, if you didn't know and you didn't have those notes, it would almost look like there's just a crease coming across his feet right here. But it looks like there was a stain around here, and it's just the edge of where the stain was. And apparently it wasn't enough to knock it down. The book looks great otherwise. One thing that kind of tripped me up was on the cover here, you have these lines that kind of come down on both sides, and at first glance, it looks like, uh-oh, there's some sort of color break that I have to deal with, but it's part of the artwork, just an oddly placed line on both sides of the book. But just a tremendous Jack Kirby cover. You know, whether you're a Kirby purist and consider his books from his first run at Marvel Comics to be like the Kirby era, you know, maybe this second phase isn't as collectible, or whatever your reasons may be, it's still Kirby. And it's a way for me to get books with Kirby art, Kirby covers at a much more affordable price than going back and getting Fantastic Four 8 or 18. I can get 181, and fortunately was able to also get the 9.8 on it. So great work, Palm Beach, on that one. Thank you for putting that extra effort in on that stain. Really appreciate it. All right, last two. We've got Fantastic Four 247 from 1982. This one, I mean, it's Doom. He's gigantic. Looking at the notes on this, I had assessed this one as a 9.6 as is, and wanted to send it to Palm Beach to hopefully get that final grade bump and get it across the finish line to a 9.8. But he did mention a few things with this book: soft, rounded corners, including a miscut with a small extra piece attached at the back bottom left corner, small printer tears at the back bottom edge. And he gave it a 9.6 minus, kind of indicating that maybe this caps at a 9.6. I've dealt with these sorts of things in the past where it's like either it's bindery tearing, a miscut, extra paper. There's a book I have to dig up and look for, but it's almost like the paper spawned a mirror image of itself on a corner, and it was just this big piece that when it was cut, for some reason it got the chunk of paper from the book that was next to it, and it got a 9.8. So I think some of these, I am not an expert on what's manufacturing it and what's not, and so I really appreciate reading these notes and kind of trying to educate myself and learn from it to kind of see if some of these things would be maybe acceptable manufacturing issues or understanding normal wear and tear. So let's see here. Fantastic Four 247 getting a 9.8. Wow. This was quite a run. John Byrne, story, cover, and art on this one. And I love that it says Dr. Doom appearance. But he is extremely larger than life here on this cover. And I'm looking for that additional piece of paper. And I see, yeah, it's the same as I described, just maybe slightly smaller. But there's just an extra piece of paper on the miscut down here at this bottom corner. But in 1982, Fantastic Four, part of the John Byrne run. And honestly, any Fantastic Four book with Doom on the cover, and there are many, is a lot of fun to have in your collection. Now, the last book, I do know what this book is. I still don't know the grade, but I know that this book was in the submission, and it just happened to be the last one. My hopes are high. I would love to have it in a 9.8. I mean, it kind of goes without saying at this point. This is another Dave Stevens book. This is probably a book that's right under the Planet Comics and 3D Space Vixens. Some might argue it's up there with it, but I think I would put it just a notch below. But it has risen in popularity. It's been on a number of hot lists. I was very happy to acquire the copy that I did. However, when I did acquire it, it was in maybe not as great a shape as I had hoped. But for me, it was important to go ahead and secure the copy and send it in for grading. And it is DN Agents number 24, one of the more famous Stevens covers, hopefully for obvious reasons. But I remember picking this up I did get it from Mile High Comics, and I had assessed the book as an 8.5. To me, it was still popular enough and valuable enough to send it in for grading, but jumping from an 8.5, my screen grade, up to, I would say, a very valuable and collectible grade, somewhere, I mean, to me, it has to get somewhere at least a 9.4 to kind of be up there. Otherwise, I'm just going to be obsessed and try and get an upgrade. Let's hope that we can end this unboxing on a super, super strong high note. I'm so happy with the grade so far. But Palm Beach's grader notes on this one: light spine corner wear, light color rub on the front near spine. He did give it a 9.6, 9.4 grade. So let's see. DN Agents, number 24, cover art by Dave Stevens from 1985. And it got a 9.6. I love it. I mean, yes, the 9.8 is always the grade that I'm looking for, but I knew that this 8.5 copy was probably just not going to get it. And of course, I will be on the hunt for a 9.8 copy, but 9.6 is amazing for where this book was, to get it all the way up to a 9.6 white pages. Very, very happy and pleased to be able to add this book to my collection, particularly my Dave Stevens graded book collection now. Just great work, Palm Beach. I'm thrilled with this submission. One of my better submissions. We'll just throw out that 9.2 that I whiffed on there, but from the Gore Shriek book, the 3D Blackthorn Sheena book, a number of these, of course, the Wolverine number 8, I was trying to get into a position where it was an upgrade into that 9.4, 9.6 space, and then figure out how I wanted to move into a 9.8, and to get them already in this submission. Very, very fortunate. So thank you, Palm Beach. You can check him out at palmbeachpresser.com. Find him on social media at Palm Beach Presser. He is back fully operational from a workload perspective. So I really appreciate that he's back at it. Highly recommend you checking out him and his services. Really super happy and super pleased with this submission. And I was checking the books out too, kind of looking at them off to the side. Everything looks really straight, sturdy. So I believe that we're beyond any sort of bending or banana-shaped books inside the slab. They look great, look fantastic. Really, really happy. Thanks for watching. Happy collecting, and see you next time.